The auction of despair. The market was loud. Crowds moved through the dusty lanes of the outer colony. Traders shouted prices. Robots dragged cages behind them. Alien slaves were lined up on platforms, weak, dirty, and hopeless. And on one of those platforms stood her, an alien woman, thin, pale blue skin, dressed in torn cloth. Her head was down. She didn't speak. She didn't move. Next to her stood a fat alien auctioneer with 4 eyes and no heart. "Next up!" The auctioneer bellowed. Strong arms, working legs, sells herself for food. How loyal is that? The crowd didn't care. She's too skinny. She's not even young. No beauty, no value. The woman stood still. She wasn't surprised. She had heard it before. Her name was Yelra, but no one here cared. She wasn't a person anymore. She was a thing, a product. Her hands trembled slightly, but not from fear. From hunger, from days without food, from missing her child. Because what no one in the crowd knew was that Yelra hadn't come here by force. She came to sell herself, willingly, to buy food for her little daughter, hidden in an alley 2 blocks away. A few rows back, a man stood watching. Human, worn coat, grease-stained hands, no jewelry. No soldiers with him. He looked like no one important, but his eyes were steady, quiet, not cruel. His name was Callan, a mechanic from Earth, working on broken ships and machines no one else would touch. He had passed through the market to find spare parts. But now, he stopped. Because something about the woman on the platform made his chest tighten. She wasn't yelling, wasn't begging, she just stood there, tired, silent, alone. 10 credits. Someone laughed. She's worth less than oil. No buyers? The auctioneer snapped. Come on, cheap labor, she'll clean your ships. Yelra didn't look up. She didn't care who bought her, as long as she got the payment. As long as her daughter got food, that was all that mattered. 5 credits, another voice mocked. Maybe she can wash my boots. The auctioneer growled, angry now. 3 credits, final offer, someone shouted. Or toss her to the scrap piles. The crowd laughed. Yelra closed her eyes. Maybe no one would buy her. Maybe her plan had failed. Maybe her daughter would starve. And then a calm voice cut through the noise. 10,000 credits. Silence. Everyone turned. Even the auctioneer's eyes went wide. What? The human stepped forward. 10,000. For her. Whispers ran through the crowd. Is he mad? She's not worth that. Why would a human pay that much? Yelra opened her eyes. She stared at him. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't staring at her body like others did. He wasn't drunk or laughing. He just looked tired and serious. Sold, the auctioneer shouted quickly, grabbing the money before the human changed his mind. Yelra was pushed off the platform. The auctioneer shoved her forward. She's yours now. Callan stepped forward and gently caught her before she fell. Humby didn't drag her, he didn't chain her, he just said, come with me. Yelra limped as they walked through the market streets. She said nothing. She expected pain, orders, cruelty. But the human said nothing. He just walked beside her. Finally, she asked, Why did you buy me? Callan didn't answer right away. Then, he said softly, I don't like auctions. She looked at him. That's not an answer. Callan stopped walking. He turned to her. You didn't scream, you didn't beg. You just stood there like you were ready to die. I've seen that look before. It's not the look of a slave, it's the look of a mother. Yelra's lips parted, but no words came out. Callan continued walking. You're hungry, you're scared, and you're not telling me something. They reached a small building at the edge of town, a mechanic's workshop with a back room and a single bed. He opened the door and said, This is yours. Eat, rest. You're safe here. Yelra stepped inside slowly. She couldn't understand. He hadn't touched her. He hadn't ordered her. He hadn't even asked her name. She sat on the bed, Staring at the food plate he left her. Callan walked to the door. "Tomorrow," he said. "You'll tell me where your child is." Her eyes snapped to his. He gave a small nod. "You didn't sell yourself for nothing." Then he walked out, closing the door behind him. And for the first time in days, Yelra cried. Not from pain, but from the strange, terrifying feeling of being treated like a person again. A home with no chains. The morning came slowly. Soft sunlight poured through the cracked window of the small room. Yelra opened her eyes, confused for a moment. She had expected cold metal floors, the sharp sting of a collar, and a stranger's voice shouting orders. But all she felt was warmth. A blanket was wrapped around her. Real food rested on the table nearby, still untouched. A quiet hum came from the next room, tools clicking, metal clanking, and the low voice of the human who bought her. Callan. She remembered his name now, and she remembered what he had said the night before. You didn't sell yourself for nothing. Her heart tightened. She didn't understand this man. Why hadn't he used her? Why hadn't he locked her in? Why hadn't he asked for anything? Yelra stood slowly, legs shaking. Hunger still gnawed at her belly, but the fear was louder. She stepped into the next room. It was a workshop. Simple, filled with machines, tools, and a half-built transport engine. Callan was sitting at a table, repairing a data board with calm, steady hands. He glanced up. "You slept," she nodded. "Yes." He pushed a chair toward her with his foot. "Sit." She hesitated, then slowly lowered herself into the chair. "I don't understand," she said. "I know." "Why did you really buy me?" Callan paused. Then he looked her in the eyes. "I've seen people break." Yelra blinked. He continued. "During the last war, I worked in refugee zones. Humans. Aliens. All the same once the bombs fell. I saw a woman, like you. She tried to trade her life for her child's safety, just like you." He looked down. "No one helped her. I didn't either. She died." Silence filled the room. Then Callan said, "I couldn't save her, but maybe I could save you." Yelra's hands shook. "I don't need saving." "I know," Callan said gently. "But your daughter might." She stiffened. "You guessed?" She whispered. "I saw the way you stood at the auction. You weren't afraid for yourself. You were afraid you'd fail someone else." Tears touched her eyes. "She's only 5. She hasn't eaten in 2 days. I left her in an alley near the burned spice shop. She's hiding, waiting for me." Callan stood up immediately. "Show me where." They walked quickly. Yelra led him through back streets and broken buildings. Her body ached, but she pushed forward. The thought of her child alone and scared burned inside her. Finally, she stopped at a narrow space between 2 fallen walls. "She's in there?" Callan nodded and ducked through the gap. Inside, hidden under a piece of cloth and behind broken crates, was a small figure, a little alien girl, tiny, thin, with purple-gray skin and wide golden eyes. She flinched when she saw Callan and tried to back away. "Wait," Yelra said softly. "It's me." The girl peeked out. "Mama." Yelra fell to her knees and opened her arms. "I'm here." The girl rushed into her embrace. I thought you weren't coming back. I told you I would. I told you to be brave." Callan stood quietly watching them. Then he knelt down and offered a piece of soft bread to the girl. She looked at him, unsure. Yelra whispered, "It's okay. He's the reason I'm here. He saved me." The girl took the bread, ate slowly, then looked at him again. "Are you my new owner?" Callan's face tightened. "No, I don't own anyone." The girl tilted her head. "Then why did you take Mama?" Callan looked at Yelra, and then at the girl. "Because I couldn't walk away." Back at the workshop, Callan set up a small bed for the girl in the side room, gave her warm water, clean cloth. A place to be safe. Yelra watched in silence. That night, after the child fell asleep, she walked up to him. I want to repay you. You don't need to, Callan said. I sold myself. I was ready for anything. You paid for me. He shook his head. I didn't pay for you. I paid to give you a chance. She stared at him. You don't even know my name. Tell me, she whispered. Yelra. Callan gave a small smile. Well, Yelra, this place is yours. No chains, no collars. You're not a servant. Not here. Tears ran down her face again. She turned away quickly, trying to hide them. But Callan had already seen. He didn't say anything, just went back to fixing a machine like it was the most normal thing in the world, to treat someone like a person. The child in the alley rain had fallen overnight. It left puddles in the cracks of the colony streets mixing with dust and trash. The sky was still gray, the kind of gray that pressed on your chest and made you feel heavy. Callan stood at the edge of the alley leaning against a wall. In one hand he held a tool bag, in the other a steaming cup of synth coffee, but he wasn't working. Not today. He was watching something. Someone, a little girl, alone. She crouched near a trash bin, wrapped in a cloth too thin for the cold. Her hands dug through scraps looking for something. Food? Cloth? Hope? Callan didn't move, didn't speak. He recognized her. Yelra's daughter. They had rescued her from this same alley 2 days ago, carried her to safety, fed her, sheltered her. But this wasn't then. This was before. Callan blinked. This was a memory. A dream? No. A nightmare. He stepped forward. Hey, he called softly. The girl froze. She looked up, eyes wide, face thin and dirty. Her legs were shaking. I'm not here to hurt you, Callan said gently. Are you lost? She didn't answer, just backed away. I won't touch you, he said. But I have food, and I know your mother. She stared at him, unsure. Silent. Then she whispered, She's not coming back. Callan felt his chest ache. She is, he said. She just needs help. The girl shook her head. They always say that. Grown-ups lie. Callan knelt down and placed the food on the ground, a warm roll wrapped in paper. I'm not here to lie. Suddenly a shout came from the street. A group of thugs stomped into the alley. 3 aliens, tall, cruel-looking. One pointed at the girl. There she is, the auction rat's brat. The girl panicked and tried to run, but she slipped and fell. The thugs laughed. Easy catch. The mother sold herself. Let's see what the daughter's worth. Callan stood. Calm. Still. Then he moved. Fast, he grabbed a pipe from the wall and swung it hard. One thug fell. The second swung a blade. Callan blocked it, kicked him back, and slammed the pipe into his gut. The third ran. Callan stood over the girl, breathing hard. It's okay, he said. She stared up at him wide-eyed. You're not like them. No, Callan said. I'm not. Then the alley faded. The sounds, the sky, the pain. It all melted. And Callan woke up, gasping. He sat on the edge of his bed, sweat on his face. It had been a dream, but not a fake one. A real memory. From the day he had seen the girl before, he ever met her mother. Back when he had walked away, he had seen her alone and done nothing. Now in the present, the little girl, Leary, was sleeping peacefully in the side room. Yelra was in the kitchen cooking something warm. Callan walked to the window. He looked out at the same alley. It was quiet now. Empty. But the past wasn't. It whispered. It reminded him. He had walked away once. He wouldn't do it again. Later, that morning, Leary woke up and walked into the room. She looked up at Callan. Did you sleep? Not really. He smiled. Why? He knelt down. Because I remembered something. A day when I saw you, and didn't help. She tilted her head. But you helped now. Yes, he said softly. But I won't forgive myself until I help right. Not just for now, but forever. Leary stared at him, then reached forward and took his hand. You're not like the others, she whispered. Callan felt something in his heart shift, a soft warmth, a connection. He wasn't her father, but in that moment, he knew he'd fight, like one. Yelra stood in front of the mirror, not because she was admiring herself. She barely recognized the reflection. Her cheekbones were sharper, her eyes less hollow, her hair no longer tangled and filthy. The bruises had faded, but the scars, they were deeper. Scars you couldn't see. Scars left by ownership. She touched her wrist. She still felt the cold grip of chains even though there were none now. The metal wasn't on her skin anymore, but it still wrapped around her thoughts. In the next room, Callan was fixing a broken heater. Sparks flew. The smell of burnt wires filled the air. Yelra walked in, carrying a small bowl of soup. You work even when nothing's broken, she said quietly. Callan looked up. Keeps my hands busy. Some things are easier to fix than others. She placed the bowl beside him. You should eat. I will. Yelra hesitated. May I ask something? Sure. Why haven't you touched me? Callan blinked. What? You bought me. I assumed there would be duties. Callan put down his tool. He looked her in the eyes. I didn't buy a thing. I bought your chance to breathe. Yelra felt her chest tighten. You could have done anything, she whispered. He nodded. And I did. I gave you food. Gave your daughter safety. I gave you time. But I'm still yours legally, she said. The system says, the system is trash, he interrupted. He walked to the old cabinet, opened a drawer, and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. He handed it to her. Her own ownership document, with his signature. At the bottom, 2 bold words were written across it in red ink. Voided. Destroyed. Yelra stared. I don't understand, she whispered. Callan picked up a lighter, lit the edge of the paper. Together they watched it burn. You are not property, Callan said firmly. Not to me, not to anyone. Yelra looked at the ashes, falling into the metal bin. I don't know how to live like that. You'll learn. That night, Yelra sat beside her sleeping daughter. Leary's chest rose and fell softly. Her face was peaceful, safe, fed. Yelra brushed her hair back. She remembered when she had held this child under a bridge during acid rain, hiding her face under a plastic sheet, when they had eaten moldy crumbs, when Leary had cried herself to sleep asking why doesn't anyone want us. Now here they were in a warm place, no chains, no shouting, no fear, just silence. And a man in the next room who had nothing to gain, yet gave everything. Yelra stepped into the workshop. Callan was asleep at the table, head resting beside a half-built circuit board. She picked up a worn blanket and gently draped it. Over his shoulders, he didn't wake up, but he whispered something in his sleep. You're not broken. She blinked, stood there in the quiet and whispered back. Neither are you. A visitor from her past rain fell again. Soft at first, then harder, like the sky couldn't hold back anymore. Inside the mechanic's shop, the roof leaked in one corner. Callan placed a metal bucket beneath the drip, then went back to work. Sparks danced from his tool as he tightened bolts on an old engine core. In the other room, Leary was drawing with chalk on the floor. She had drawn a figure that looked like Callan, and another that looked like her mother. Yelra sat on a cushion watching them both. For the first time in years, her hands were not shaking, until the knock came. A single knock. Hard. Slow. Deliberate. Callan looked up. He wasn't expecting anyone. Yelra's eyes went wide. No, she whispered. It can't be. Callan stepped toward the door and opened it just a little. Outside stood a tall alien male, dressed in black, golden armor under his cloak. His eyes were cold, cruel, and too familiar. Yelra stepped into view behind Callan and froze. The man smiled. Ah, so the runaway whore lives. Callan's jaw tightened. Who are you? He asked. I'm Rask, the alien said. Her former employer and owner. She broke a work bond and ran away with classified biodata and a child that wasn't hers to keep. Yelra's face went pale. You're lying. Am I? Rask chuckled. She failed in my labs. She stole files. She slept with a human and bore a dirty bloodline. I simply came to retrieve what's mine. Callan stepped fully into the doorway. His voice was calm. She's not yours. And she's not leaving. Rask tilted his head. You bought her, didn't you? Then I'll offer you double, triple, even. Sell her back to me. That child, too. Callan said nothing. Rask raised an eyebrow. No. You must be confused. She's a product, not a person. Callan's voice dropped. Then you're the one who's confused. Yelra took Leary's hand and moved her behind the shop wall. She could hear the low voices, but she also heard something else, her own heart pounding. Rask had come not for justice, not for truth, but for control. And if he took her, he'd make sure. Leary disappeared next. I don't want your money, Callan said. You should. You live in a trash heap. Alone. A child, a runaway alien, and a broken shop. I have more peace here than you've had in your life. Rask sneered. Then prepare to lose it. He snapped his fingers. From the shadows, 2 armored guards stepped forward. Weapons ready. Callan reached under the work table, pulled out a long metal rod with 2 buttons. He pressed one. Electric blue light sparked from the tip. Custom stun bar, he said. Built it myself. You'd raise that for her? Rask scoffed. I'd raise it for anyone you tried to hurt. Rask grinned. Very well. Let's see how long you last. The first guard rushed. Callan struck fast. His rod sparked against armor. The guard fell, gasping, twitching. The second guard aimed a plasma bolt. Callan rolled, grabbed a shield plate, off the wall and blocked the blast. He charged and tackled the guard into the wall, but Rask had vanished. Yelra heard footsteps behind her. She turned. Rask stood in the back room holding a pulse dagger. He grabbed Leary's arm. She belongs with her own kind. Yelra screamed. No! She threw herself at him. He stabbed. The blade slashed her arm, but she didn't stop. She bit his wrist, punched his throat, kicked his knee. Rask fell to one side. Callan burst in seconds later. Leary ran into his arms, sobbing. Yelra sat on the floor, shaking, blood on her arm. Callan knelt beside her. Are you okay? She nodded weakly. I will be. Rask lay unconscious, bound in power cable. Callan stared down at him. He said you weren't a person. Yelra looked up at him. That's all I've been told for years. Callan shook his head. Then maybe it's time you told yourself something new. That night, Leary slept beside her mother. Yelra stood in the doorway watching Callan fix the door Rask had broken. You didn't sell me, she said softly. No. You didn't buy me. No. Then what am I to you? Callan looked at her. You're someone who deserves to be free. She stared at him. Maybe one day, she whispered. I'll believe that too. The storm outside had passed, but inside Callan's workshop something heavier still hung in the air. Silence, the kind that wrapped around your chest and waited for truths no one wanted to say. Yelra sat at the edge of the bench holding a fresh bandage to her wounded arm. Leary was asleep again, curled in a blanket near the warmth of the floor heater. Callan stood with his back to her, staring at an old photo frame sitting on a dusty shelf. Who's that? Yelra asked softly. Callan didn't turn. My wife. And daughter. Yelra blinked. She had never seen him talk about anyone before, never seen him still. What happened? She asked. He sighed, the kind of sigh that carried pain like a weight. They died. in the last colony war. He finally turned around. My daughter was 7. Loved to paint stars on the walls. My wife always smelled like copper and flowers. We were building a life, one bolt at a time. Yelra stayed quiet. I wasn't with them, he said. I was out fixing a miner's engine, a small job, just a few hours away. He clenched his jaw. Then the bombs fell. Silence again. Yelra whispered, I'm sorry. Callan nodded. They were buried with numbers, not names. No one even came to tell me. I found their names on a death manifest. Digital, cold. He sat across from her. I swore I'd never get close to anyone again, not people, not anything. But then I saw you. Yelra looked away. On that auction block, covered in dust. I saw the same eyes, Callan said. The same pain, the same kind of strength I once saw in my wife when she held our child during the food riots. Quiet, brave, not for herself. But for someone else? You reminded me of someone I failed to protect. Yelra's fingers gripped the bench. So, pity? No, he said firmly. Recognition. He leaned forward. You didn't belong in chains. You didn't belong. On that block, you were a mother, standing on your feet when the world wanted you on your knees. Yelra's voice cracked. I didn't think anyone could see that. I did, Callan said, and I knew I couldn't walk past again. Not this time. The heater hissed softly. Yelra looked at her daughter. Peaceful, breathing easy, not starving, not hiding. Then, she looked at Callan, the man who had nothing, but still gave them everything. I sold myself to save her, she said. But you gave, without asking for anything. Callan gave a small smile. You already gave something in return. She frowned. What? He pointed toward the sleeping child. Hope. She reached out slowly, placed her hand on his. Warm, human, real. Thank you, she whispered. Not for saving me, but for letting me feel saved. The moment sat there like quiet gold in the dim light. Two broken people, finding something neither of them expected. Later that night, Callan sat alone on the roof of the workshop staring at the stars. Yelra climbed up quietly and sat beside him. She handed him a cup of warm tea. Do you think we deserve peace? She asked. He took a sip. I think peace isn't something we deserve. It's something we fight to give others. And sometimes we get to share a little of it too. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Then I'll fight for it too. Morning. Light warmed the old workshop. Birds chirped from the roof vents. The sound of soft breathing came from the side room where Leary still slept, clutching a stuffed tool rag Callan had shaped into a little animal. Yelra stood in the kitchen corner, stirring tea. Her arm was healing. The pain had lessened, but what surprised her most was what hadn't returned. Fear. She hadn't woken up shaking. She hadn't listened for doors unlocking or boots outside the walls. She hadn't felt like someone's property. Instead, she felt like something else. Someone. Callan stepped in, rubbing his eyes. His shirt was smudged with oil, but he smiled the same tired, gentle way. I made bread, Yelra said, handing him a small plate. He raised an eyebrow. That's a real loaf, flour from the corner market. I traded my scarf for it. You didn't need to. She smiled. I wanted to. They sat together at the tiny table. No fancy chairs, no golden dishes, just warmth and quiet. Suddenly, Leary came running in barefoot, holding a crumpled piece of paper. Look, she shouted. It's us. The picture she drew had 3 figures, one tall, one with long hair, and one small with wide eyes, all standing under a sun. She pointed. That's you, Callan. That's Mama. And that's me. Callan stared at the picture. His throat felt tight. Yelra looked at the child, then at him. She sees you as family, she whispered. He looked down. She shouldn't. Why not? Because I'm just a man with a broken shop and a past I can't fix. Yelra touched his hand. She doesn't need you to be perfect. She just needs you to stay. That afternoon, a visitor came. An older woman from the settlement. A records keeper. She had heard rumors of what had happened. Of a mother saved. A child protected. A man who stood against chains. She brought a small screen tablet and asked gently, "Would you like to update your residence record?" Callan blinked. "What do you mean?" "You can register the child and her mother, officially, as your household." Yelra looked down, unsure. "Are we allowed?" she asked. The woman smiled. "This colony honors choice, not chains." Later, as the sun dipped low, Callan sat on the front step of the workshop. Yelra sat beside him. She held the little registration chip in her hand. It had her name. And her daughters, no longer tagged as property, no longer tracked as a runaway, no longer lost. She held it tightly, then looked at him. "We weren't yours," she said quietly. "But now." He turned. She reached out and placed the chip in his hand. "We're with you." That night, Leary crawled into Callan's lap and fell asleep there. Yelra watched from across the room. Callan gently wrapped a blanket around the child and looked up at Yelra. "She called me Dad when she was half asleep." Yelra smiled. "She's never had one." He said nothing for a moment, then whispered, "Neither have I." In a galaxy where people bought lives and sold dignity, where value was measured in credits, not kindness, one human made a choice no one expected. He didn't buy a servant, he found a family. He didn't ask for love, but he earned it. Outside, the rain returned, but inside the old workshop, for the first time in a long time, no one felt cold.